Hello everyone, this is Charlotte and this is a podcast called Chatting in Cars. It's where I talk about random topics at length, hopefully not boring the tits off you. And I go on tangents, often swearing and swear, mainly at drivers, you know, as you do. I don't think anyone's got any real chill when it actually comes to driving. Currently on the way home from work, so my energy levels are completely hurt. So I'm hoping you guys are having a good day for Friday. Hopefully more interesting weekend coming up for you. I intend to be half naked eating crap. So that's, you know, life over 30, I hope, right? Every 30-year-old's dream. Sleeping. Anyway, so there is a disclaimer at the start of this podcast, but because I too talk about topics that are not exactly kosher, when I talk about sensitive topics, I swear a lot. And I often go on tangents. So even if it does say, you know, we're talking about kittens today, we could end up talking about, you know, some kind of horrible experience that I've had. So, and this is all first person conversation as well, which sounds very narcissistic in itself, but at least, you know, I'm the only one in the car, and if I hear extra voices, we should be worried. Right, the topic for today is, on the way home, even though I'm absolutely fucking knackered, is abuse, which is a horrible topic. There is no good abuse. I wish I could look at that critically and say, oh, well, you know, some good abuse, you know. I suppose you could argue that, you know, if you're a dominatrix or something like that, it would be alright. If you're into that. I suppose it's not abuse then, is it, really? It's just a kink. Because if you're not seeing it as any kind of degrading thing, then it's not technically abuse, is it? You know, even hair pulling and choking is somewhat nice. So, you know, I'm not going into that. That's a different podcast. But, you know, if you've listened to any of the podcasts, you'll know I came from an abusive childhood sort of thing. My parents were my mom was very physical, my dad was a berserker from a different standpoint. He was more psychological, emotional abuse, besides neglect, besides, you know, just keeping his distance. If he wasn't going fucking nuts, he was sleeping and ignoring us. It was that was his way of dealing with the fact that he had kids or any kind of responsibility. So that was his form of parenting. So, yeah. It was very odd, because then, you know, it kind of gives you the idea of what men should be or could be and probably shouldn't be. So growing up as a girl, as opposed to a woman, it clouded my vision of what males should be. Luckily, I still have my older brother to sort of, you know, segue into what, you know, sort of guide me into what guys should be doing or could possibly be doing that wasn't abusive. So I had sort of like a, you know, a spirit level there, if you want to go into, you know, measuring out what guys should be doing. He grew up really well. Given my dad as a role model, I think honestly he looked at that and just went the other way. So I've had abuse in my childhood up until my late teens, 19, 20, I moved out. Then I went into a marriage with a covert narcissist, another form of abuse, which is a whole different, I mean, both my parents are semi-narcissistic anyway. But then I moved in, like, you know, got married to this covert narc, which was a different format, which I didn't pick up on because I was just so in love. And, you know, at 17, you don't know any better, do you? That's when I started dating him. Finally divorced him at 33, and then picked up with a guy who was an absolute fuckboy. And I don't know what the fuck I was doing, to be honest. I had held a candle for this guy since I was like 20. Early 20s, and obviously that part of me hadn't, you know, healed or grown. So, you know, you'd think by 40 this guy was more mature enough to handle the relationship. Turns out he wasn't. He's a lying, cheating bastard. So that was my experience. So he turned out to be the person I would learn what sexual abuse is from. He was sexually violent. He didn't like no, and he was often, you know, drunk when he did it. And, you know, all these things you learn about as you get older. In a sense, I'm grateful that I had that later on in life rather than earlier on in life. I don't think I could have withstood a relationship, even if it was just for, you know, I only dated him for about 2.5 years. I don't think I could have handled that in my early 20s as a full-time thing. I think it would have, you know, really fucked me up. I mean, I'm pretty fucked up now, but, you know, as most people are in their late 30s. Most people are facing some shit. But, you know, my early 20s, I think it would have done some real damage, because not only was he, and he was sexually abusive when he was in his 20s as well, and I didn't pick up on it then, because, you know, you don't know. I was like 22 or something like that when I first had sex with him. And I thought, oh, this is what we do, because it's, you know. And he was fairly rough then, but, you know, he wasn't as rough as he was when I actually dated him full on. As you get to know someone, things start unfolding and unveiling. So, you know, that's where I learned sexual abuse. So if you can name any form of abuse, I've generally come across it in my life so far. Besides drug abuse, where someone's, you know, taken drugs and or done something to me because of drugs. I think that's the only thing I've managed to escape yet. So, you know, tap wood, fingers crossed, don't bring that shit near me. Although he did take drugs, my ex-boyfriend, so, and my ex-husband wanted me to try drugs, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck, dude? It's like, come on. If I'm this late in the game and I've never taken them, you think I'm really gonna take it now? It's like, really? I think both of them are fucking idiots, but you know, it's the only thing I've avoided. So, you know, physical, psychological, emotional, sexual. I got assaulted by some random at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been robbed. I've had my car broken into and shit like that, because you just live in that kind of an area. You get used to the violence of the area and the situation. Poverty cycles and all that shit. It has been a long span of just different forms of abuses. I know it sounds weird, doesn't it? It's horrible. It's not until you actually can identify them, because while you're sitting in them, you just think, oh, this just happens, this is normal. This isn't fucking normal. There's nothing about this is fucking normal. Some people go through life and never have to face any of this shit. Just never. Just, you know, my ex-husband was like a financial abuser as well. So he'd use all my money. My ex-boyfriend was the same, actually. He wanted to use my money. He wouldn't use his. So, you know, I've had pretty much every kind of abuse thrown at me. And most people will have by this age. I'm 37 now, nearly 38 in May. But you come to grips with it, really, don't you? And you use it as fuel. Well, I use it as rocket fuel to get past things. And some people, you know, they look at what you've done, or you look at what other people have done. And I know it's horrible to say it could be worse. Some people get really weird when you say, oh, but it could have been worse. But it's true, it's the way we deal with our situation. Is, you know, you go through some fucked up shit. Of course you're going to say, well, it could have been worse. So it's very British things to say. And I was raised British. Even though before that it was like Irish all the way. But you know if you're resilient, you don't just, you know, crumble, you don't. Because you know at the end of the day you still have to fucking keep going. So when you've got some asshole treating you like shit, really, you could play the victim, it doesn't get you anywhere, it doesn't fix the problem, and you're more likely to take on more shit. Or you could actually stand up for yourself and say, oh, I don't like this isn't me, and I'm not doing it, fuck you. And when I was young, like when I was a kid, my favourite word, my mum will tell you this, my favourite word was no. And she beat that out of me. I admit she beat that out of me, because I became a very compliant child. And you know, as a what was I, a toddler or something like that, my favourite word was no, or in a minute. And she smacked the fuck out of us and made us compliant, because in a sense, yes, we had to be compliant in order to learn. But at the same time, there's probably better ways of doing that. But it's something that I grew out of. So when it came to saying no to people who are sexually abusing me, or emotionally, psychologically abusing me, using me as a doormat, it becomes harder to do it. So really you have to make a conscious effort to say, no, I don't want this. I'm not gonna let you keep using me this way. And you have to be able to recognize abuse, because if you just made it normative, then you're fucked. It's like, no, it's not natural. And in order to do that, you need to ask around. You need to look around as well. You need to see what's going on with other people and what's the benchmark for treatment. That's the hardest part, because I grew up in a low SES area. Girls get treated like shit in those areas, by the way. I don't know what happens to the guys. It's usually the guys doing the treating, but girls generally do get treated like shit in low SES areas. You could say this is a first world country, but it's still, you get used and abused so much more than a guy would do. The guys mainly face violence and drug abuse. The girls face fucking everything, and sexual stuff as well. And abandonment as soon as you get knocked up, all that kind of crap. The most cliche shit, think about it. Girls are gonna get in that area. So I grew up in that with that as the norm. There was, you know, expectation that you get knocked up in high school. It's like, we're expecting it. It's like, so, for example, when I signed up to uni, my principal at my high school said, you're gonna have to have backup plans. It's like, no, I'm going to uni. I'd already done a unit in high school for uni, which was this cool bridging course, the initiative they set up. But his reply to I'm going to uni, me going to uni, was, well, you need a backup plan. It's like, What do you mean? No. They lack so little confidence in the, I don't know if it was a girl thing or if it was just a kid thing in that area, but they lack confidence in the education that they had instilled in these people. And my grades were not bad. They were not bad at all. I was definitely heading towards uni. It's like they wanted to sign up to TAFE, which was like learning how to be a plumber and welder and all that kind of shit. But knowing that that was generally a guy thing for our area, guys signed up to that. The alternative would have been me becoming like a mum early and sitting on welfare, because at the time we also had the baby bonus thing going on, which is where a shitload of my girls in high school got knocked up, got a bonus, and they got stuck with a kid and the guy fucked off. So that was a trend going through, and I looked at that and I said, I'm not fucking doing that. So even though the structures that are around you designed to help you get through in life can be fucking questionable and bordering on abusive, because they weren't going to support me in my idea that I wanted to go to uni, and I was already, you know, pretty much in there anyway. I had the course done, I'd passed the course, I'd done the foundation unit. So what the fuck, where was the support? It's a very strange struggle you've got in poverty, because there's even people who just don't have faith in you. What is that guy doing? Yeah, we're all merging, but this asshole wants to leave it to the last minute. Sorry, I'm watching idiots that can't merge. What? Yeah, obviously, dickhead, merge. Do you ever get that in your country? It's like, I don't know if it's over east as well, but in Western Australia, these fuckers cannot merge. They just cannot. It's like they see orange light and shit their pants. Yeah, it's a merge. Anyway, sorry. You found my pet peeve. It's shit drivers. I think that's everyone. Oh, I wonder what it is. Anyway, so abuse. It comes in many formats. What you really need to do is isolate what it is. Sometimes you're a contributing factor, I will admit that. I contributed in that I allowed it to happen. Some point, I couldn't avoid my parents abusing me. I just couldn't. I didn't have a choice. There was the option to run away from home, which some of my friends did. It just ended up worse after that, because then they became like couch surfing street kids kind of fucking thing, which was not good. And they faced worse things earlier on in life because of that. But at the same time, if I stayed at home, I would have got abused. But the good thing was it wasn't sexual abuse. It was every other fucking thing. There weren't any drugs, there was no alcohol, but it was physical from my mum and psychological, emotional from both of them, and they both neglected us kids. So we sort of fended for ourselves, and we became the parents of the family, because my dad didn't want to fucking grow up, and my mum was too busy wiping his ass, essentially. So she had to go out and get a job, even though, you know, she wanted to stay home and be the house mum, because he was supposed to go to work. So we raised ourselves. My brother was my absolute role model. He's still my guy as far as I can see. My brother's awesome. But he was also our protector. He became the father figure that we didn't fucking have. My older sister was a bit of a bitch, actually. But again, look at the pressure that she's been put under, because she's the oldest female. She has to take on the role of mum if she, you know, and she never did, but that would be the expectation. My brother raised me. My sisters, I don't know what the fuck they did. My younger sister was a brat. She was just a brat. But no, I was you know, my brother's name is Joe, so I was Joe Jr. He was awesome. He still is awesome. He's a great dad now. But all four of us were faced with the same abuse. My older sister got more intellectual abuse from my dad, because she wasn't as sharp as, you know, me or my older brother. She's a blonde. She's like a dumb blonde kind of thing going on. And it didn't do her no favours later in life, because she ended up with boyfriends, real shitheads. She was one of these clubber girls, you know, like the blonde hair, you know, took ecstasy and shit like that. As far as my dad goes, me and my younger sister didn't really factor in. I think he acknowledged he had 2 kids and that was about it. We got left to our own devices a lot, which was fun, because I've got ASD and I'm like, I'm in my own little fucking world most of the days, so I wasn't really fazed by that. As a result, I became sort of like a Sigma. So I handle my shit anyway. Do I want people following me? I could care less, quite frankly. I spent the majority of my childhood trying to get my younger sister, to stop copying me, because, you know, you always get those parents where if there's something like a 2-year age gap between them, they dress them the same, they get them to act the same. It's like, you're just like so-and-so. It's like, I fucking am not. So I spent a large part of my childhood trying to, differentiate myself from my younger sisters. I swear to God, I'm not like her. It's like, and we're not. We're polar opposites. She's all airy-fairy, and she goes off with, when we tried to live together while she was over in December for a Christmas break, it was a fucking nightmare because she is a slob, essentially, and I'm, OCD level anal retentive when it comes to living. So my house is clean, and she comes home and it's like suitcase just exploded. I'm like, oh fuck. But we took different paths. All 4 of us took different paths. You can face abuse and still come out on top, except for this fucking 4-wheel drive, which is about to get plowed into. Why would he do that? Idiot. 4-wheel drives, huh? It's like pickup trucks in America. You're stupid. What is that? My brother became a really good father. My older sister became a really good mother. I became very good at business. I enjoyed business thoroughly because we never had any money, and so that became the turning point for me. My older sister grew some balls and fucked off to a different country because she just could not stand being under thumb with these 2 assholes that treated us like shit. So we all took different roles, all very unique in our own way. We just went different ways, but all 4 of us, I think, came out pretty constructive given the environment we were raised in, because we looked at what it was and we said, I don't want to fucking do that, and I went the other way. So that was pretty hands-on environment to learn the hard way about anti-role models and what you don't want to be and don't want to do when you grow up. I don't think I could ever hit a kid, and I never have. Even when it comes to I'm not against smacking kids, I'm against punching kids. When it gets to the point where it's physically, not good for the kid. There's one thing to give a short smack on the butt and go, no, you're not getting it the first 500 times. This is the consequence. But my mum used to lay into us. And it wasn't just hitting, it was like hair pulling and dragging down to the ground and shit like that. She'd drag you to your room by your hair. It was just horrible. My dad was never hands-on abusive. He was berserker. He shouted, he threw things, he broke things off the walls. He had my brother up against the wall at some point, I do remember. And my mum cracked a giant lollipop, weirdly enough, over his head because he swore at her and he wouldn't get out of bed because she came to wake him in. All these things that I remember as an adult, and I sit there and think, I never want to be that. I never want to do this because they failed us as parents. They absolutely failed us. And it's taken years to admit that because for a large chunk of my life, I was afraid of them. From about, I'd say 5 to 12, I was afraid of them. By 12, I started getting pissed off. I don't know if it was hormones or just being that fucking fed up with these assholes. Because it was uncalled for. And you watch most of this shit and you go, well, that's just unfair. Why would you need to do that? I mean, it was never, none of us kids were particularly bad. My brother would talk back, but that's it. And none of my sisters never did. Because we watched what happened to him and we didn't want to get the same treatment. So it was, conformism by intimidation, really. And my brother had ADHD, so my parents went fucking all out trying to control his fucking ass. ADHD, those fuckers cannot sit still. He grew out of it, he mellowed out, but he still got some tics. My ASD, my parents failed to recognize at all. That's probably because girls mask it better than boys do. We are rule followers, we look around and we copy. Whereas the guys will just look around. It's like, it's a weird trend in the studies, and I haven't researched, but I looked at the research on it, and I'm sitting there going, this is just fucking weird. And then you go down the checklist of characteristics, and you go, fuck, how did I not pick this up earlier? It's crazy. Well, I tell you what, nothing about ASD has ever stood in my way. Nothing's ever stopped me doing anything. It's never, they call it a disability or a disorder. I'm going, nothing, that implies that there's something negative about it, and I've not found anything that's negative about it yet. I've never had any kind of learning difficulties. In fact, I've done really well academically, but that's because I hyperfixate on what I'm learning about. I don't understand. But then again, it's a spectrum, so some people have got strengths in different areas, I guess. I failed gym because I'm completely uncoordinated, and I hate team sports and things like that. I know that's part of it, because you have to know the rules and you have to be able to have the social skills and like that, and I fucking hate that. But I'm still active in other ways. I adapted my life to suit my SD needs. I know I need to be active. So instead of doing team sports and all that weird confrontational touchy-feely shit, I go to the gym on my own and I do my weights and my Pilates / yoga / so you adapt yourself, you adapt your life, you find you customize your life to your quirks. I know I have real trouble with public speaking and stuff like that. That could be a combination of ASD, PTS, intimidation from my parents and stuff like that. My mum always liked us quiet. My dad didn't like us making loud noises in general. If ever my sisters and I kicked off laughing, he would crack the shits. He'd come barreling down the alleyway, shut the fuck up, you fucking... And he'd just kick off and you'd be like, well, now we can't even be happy. And if you ever started crying, both of them would say, well, shut up, I'll give you something to cry about, and they fucking did. So you can't cry. You can't be angry, because if you're angry and you give them a bad look, they're going to hit you again. It's like we weren't allowed to have emotions, positive emotions, negative emotions. You were allowed to sit still, be quiet, and shut up, essentially. And that was the neglect / control. I mean, I picked up on rules quite quickly because, as you do that, you learn faster about what the guidelines are and you follow them. You tend to follow them. They would probably look at themselves and say, we did a good job parenting. I fucking doubt it. Considering I've got, like a cracked eye socket, a cracked jaw, I got fucked up ankles and shit like that from them not seeking medical treatment when we were fucking supposed to get it. My body is fucked because of them. But I survived and I learned a lot. I learned what I would never do or be, and I learned how to, be resilient in the face of that kind of shit. Like when I was assaulted in 2008, some random guy, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was going for a walk because I couldn't sleep, I had jet lag. And there is police records of this, so if you want to backtrack and never find out my identity. He cracked me in the jaw, and at the time it was more the shock of a boy hitting a girl rather than him actually physically hurting me, because my mum had hit me that many fucking times at a harder rate. Like, she really fucked us up, that I was used to getting hit. So it was no real shock, there was no pain. He got me in the eye socket, to be honest, on a cheekbone, right hand side cheekbone. But it was the shock of a boy hitting a girl, because my dad had never hit us, but he'd done other things. It was my mum that was laying into us, and she didn't hold back. She did it in public as well. She didn't give a fuck. So when a guy finally hits you, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the guy actually is. And we were told our entire life, guys aren't supposed to hit girls. But when one does, you're like, oh, okay. So, I'm fairly upbeat about the equal rights shit, but I just don't think anyone should be hitting anyone unless you're paid to do it, right? That's my gig. I like going to UFC fights, so I like watching people get laid into. It's nice. It's entertaining. I want to see who wins. I want to see who's the stronger fighter and who's the more resilient one. But just fucking around outside, there's no reason to hit anyone. No one should be hitting anyone, parent or otherwise, really. There's got to be more civil ways of dealing with that shit. Sexual violence, which is my most recent form of abuse that I've come across, because it was new. And if you've listened to any of the podcasts about cohesion, I think it was cohesion, I talked about what my ex-boyfriend used to do and how rough he was and violent. To sum it up, basically, he was a fuckboy. He had no finesse or, gentleness when he came to fucking. He liked to fuck, and he was hard and he was angry, and he's usually drunk, and he would smoke weed so he wouldn't feel any pain, and he would take Viagra so it would stay hard for hours. And so then he could go to town on you for hours. And you learn to, clench your abdominals, and you grip onto things and you try not to make horrible noises and pretend you're enjoying it, having a good time. But realistically, it's fucking excruciating. It's like being punched in the taint. And you can feel your whole cervix shifting forward when they do it as well. It's a horrible experience. But what I kept telling myself, not only was I feeding myself bullshit about how tough I was at the time, it's like, oh, I can take this, yeah. Because we do. We want to save face. We don't want to come across as weak, and that's part of my upbringing, because my mum used to kick the shit out of us. And we used to think, well, I can take more than this bitch, so keep hitting, there's a toughness you sort of develop in low SES areas. You're like, yeah, fuck you, I can take more than this. Kill it, do it again, kick me again, fucking do it again, you little prick. And so part of that was my upbringing where I could tolerate a shitload of abuse, but this was a new form of abuse. I wasn't used to getting, you know, punched in the womb with a dick. And he was not small either. He was proud of the fact that he was big. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know you're inflicting this much pain on people and you just don't fucking care. And that was part of him being a covert narc. He just didn't care. He got his rocks off by abusing women. I swear he hates women. He just doesn't want to fuck men. Ooh, nice bike. But that's what some people are raised as. And you sit there and think, you try and forgive them for what they've done to you. But it was every fucking time. And the only time he didn't do it that way was either when he blacked out because he was too drunk, or he was too fucking high and he zoned out. And you sit there thinking, or he fell asleep. So that was my sex life for 2.5 years. And he'd brag about how he was going to go, you know, we'd be leaving his favorite pub or whatever, and he'd be bragging to his other fuckboy friends. It's like, we're going to go home and fuck. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, we're going to go home and fuck. Great. I hope the alcohol kicks in. And I got lucky a few times because the amount of alcohol I had drunk made me numb, so I couldn't feel it. But that shouldn't be happening at all. And if you ever come to the point where you have to, you know, you feel like you have to elicit some sense of toughness when it comes to physical abuse, then that is definitely an abusive situation that you need to get out of. I lost my sex drive completely because of him, because my body just went, this isn't fucking right. I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. I mean, my ex-husband was wonderful at sex. It was the only thing he had. He was fairly attractive, you know, yeah. But this guy didn't even have this. He had nothing to offer. So I think he knew it, and they sort of took it out on girls around him. I don't know why. But anyway, you got to get out of those situations. And I know it's easier said than done. But fuck those guys. They treat women like they hate them. The yoga guy that I was talking about that I had a crush on, I think he was a crush, I don't know. I still like him a bit. If you've listened to the other podcast, he was talking about, he did a post on his Facebook and stuff, how, you know, why are we treating girls like we hate them while we shag them? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I agree. Why the fuck do you do it? It's not fun. There is roughness, and then there's just fucking abuse. I've cried during sex with that asshole before, and he didn't stop, and he didn't like the word no. And I had to, one time I definitely had to stop, and I had to squat down to try and, you know, dishevel everything back down, you know, try and squat position, push everything back down with your pelvic muscle and things like that. He didn't give a shit. He got up and had a drink. He got up another drink, and then came back to it. He's a fucker. I've bled because of this asshole. He just doesn't care. And guys are like, some guys are like that. Not all guys. Some guys are amazing. I know there's beautiful guys out there. But you got to watch out for these fuckheads. And don't put don't put it down to you've got to be tough and take this on because you love them. They don't love you. If they're willing to do that, that's not love, that's abuse. That's exploitation. And they're going to use you for it. Now, my ex-husband, amazing at sex. I have to say that. Even though he was a non-monogamous piece of shit. He was a good lover. I miss that about him. If there is anything, that would be it. There was some kind of a softness to him right at the start of the relationship. I think it gave up, because I was with him 16 years. I think he gave up at about 13. Around 13 years, he started just getting really arrogant and self-absorbed, and his narcissism really started showing. What he was doing to his brother, he was now doing to me, and I was the villain. I think, honestly, that was the point when he started, you know, finding other people for long-term kind of fucking aroundness. But yeah, even then, because I knew he was cheating on me. I knew it because there were signs. There were marks on his body. There was girls' clothes in the back of the car. There was hair all over the fucking apartment, shit like that. Just little signs. And I kept brushing it under the rug thinking, oh, he couldn't possibly, because we don't want to admit that these people are genuine fucking assholes and doing this to us because we've been with them so long. And if we're admitting that they're doing this to us, then, you know, maybe we were wrong, or maybe we lose face, or, you know, or maybe our idea of what these people are isn't what they really are. And then it completely fucks up your brain because, fuck it, I've just spent 16 years with the same asshole. I honestly thought he wouldn't be this horrible, right? Because we don't want to see things fail. We want to know that the amount of time and money and investment and everything we put into the situation was worth it in the end. Otherwise, what the fuck were we working for to begin with? And I'm a Taurus, so I'm not going to start anything if I don't know it won't win. It's like, why waste your time and effort when I could be eating and sleeping and fucking? That's my life. But you know, it gives you the shits because you don't want to fail. At the same time, you don't want to, you know, you want it to work, because if it doesn't work, then you're pretty much pwned. So, yeah, I don't know. What I can do is give good advice, is like, sex is not enough to hold you, whether it's good sex or not. Abuse is still abuse. If you know that this person doesn't fit in with your values or your morals, no amount of good sex is going to hold you. It's not going to sustain you. You're still going to get emotionally fucked over, screwed over. You know, you're going to find yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering where the fuck they are, or maybe, like me, they're going to roll over one night in hot and heavy sweat, and you could tell that they're turned on, and then they're going to open their eyes and recognize that it's you laying next to them, and then completely shut down. That's what happened to me. That was one of the most horrible things I think happened to me while I was married. Because you know he wasn't thinking of you. He was thinking of someone else. That crippled me. That really fucked me over. Because I was concerned at the time. I thought, oh, he's having a bad dream or something like that. And then, no, he was laughing and having a really good time. As soon as he opened his eyes, he realized it was me, and it's just, oh, it's you sort of thing. And it fucked me up, because I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm your wife. What did I do? And I wasn't the kind of horrible wife that would nag him and all that kind of shit. I was, you know, cute and cuddly, because I knew that would work, and that was what kept the system running, or at least I thought it was. Turns out it was some whore called Cass. Yeah, there's always a whore called Cassandra or some shit like that, who lived closer to north of the river. And it was one of his clients, and I'm like, you know what? I've had you for 16 years, I've waited on you hand and foot, I've just given you everything of my life, from 17 onwards, and now you're fucking some slut. And I said, no. And the worst, what really broke it was him finally coming out, admitting it, coming clean about it. I'm not monogamous, I don't believe in marriage. That snapped it, because before that I had brushed everything under the rug. I said, this can't be happening. So I just ignored it. And I ignored it, and I ignored it for 16 years. And then finally he admits it openly. I'm like, right, fucker. That's it. That's the last one. It's like, and it takes something like that to make you snap out of it. I swear it does. There's no way around it. You're going to have to face it at some point. The thing is to be brave and resilient if you can. If you can get support networks around you, if you've got friends or family or people, the kind of people that are that can understand what you're coming from. Maybe they've lived it themselves, or you know, or might be able to provide some kind of safe zone, safe place to go to. I didn't have it. I think at best when I left my ex-husband, I had my brother's couch to sleep on. And even then his ex-wife, even then his wife was like, when are you leaving? I'm going, dude, my life is falling apart. Can you just give me a fucking sec? I didn't actually say that because this is my brother's wife and we're all supposed to be nice to each other, but at the same time you're like, why are you such an asshole? Didn't make sense. But yeah, she's a passive-aggressive bitch, so what can you do? Hopefully, if you've ever been in that situation, you can find some networks of people who can help you, or places you can go where you feel safe. Well, people I feel worse for, because I was homeless in the process of leaving my ex-husband, but it's the people who are living in their cars that are homeless with kids I feel the most for. If you've got a car at all, you know. If you don't have a car, it's got to be like a billion times worse. I can only imagine how it's compounded by having kids to look after. And of course, they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand why mum and dad aren't working out, and why dad's deciding to fuck some girl called Cass instead of the woman who he claims to love. You know, it doesn't make sense. So these are the people I feel most for. I highly recommend if you do find yourself, and recognize it early, because the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get. You're going to feel shit about yourself because you didn't pull yourself out of it sooner. But you got to get out there, guys. You got even guys. I know there's like guys that are seeing, like the yoga guy right now. I'm pretty sure he's in a fucked up situation. I've a strong feeling the girl he was telling me about, who he already had, because I asked him out and he said, I've already got a girl, but how are you going, sort of thing, because he wanted to carry on the conversation. I shut it down because I'm like, right, okay, I've just asked you out. This is a really awkward situation. I'm just going to shut it down. Great, have a good, I'm great, have a good New Year's, or whatever it was. I don't know. I was kind of, adrenaline rushing because I just asked someone out, and my social anxiety fucked me over there. But I'm pretty sure the girl he went, I think it was his ex, who he has a kid with, or one of his exes he has a kid with. I think it was her. I have a strong feeling, because they have a kid, obviously. And so you've got this kid hanging in the balance, and you want it to give it a good life. Even if the mother is, a complete piece of shit who cheats. I have a strong feeling. Because at one point I asked her who the kid's mum was, and if they still got along and things like that. And he backed off really sharply, and he was like, no. And I thought, oh, okay, something's gone on there. I won't probe any deeper. But I have a strong feeling he went back to her because of the kid. Because later I found photos on his Facebook of him and his kid. And I'm like, okay, dude, this is your choice. But if you left her, you probably left her for a reason. So I don't know what's going on with those guys. I don't know. I'm hoping he is wise enough to know what he left the first time and see the problem. Unless, of course, he was the problem, then we don't know. But guys still have to face all this shit. And there's a large chunk of guys that just want to be nice and do the right thing, and they'll stay for the kid, or they'll stay for, because they think their partner is not capable of looking after themselves or something like that. But you gotta have the balls to say, this isn't working for me, this is unhealthy, it's not gonna go anywhere, I'm just abusing myself, and I'm allowing the abuse if I stay. I'm enabling it. And generally, I suppose, do as I do and pack up your shit and leave. Because if you know that circumstances are not going to work out for you, if it's doing more damage to stay than it is to leave, then fucking leave, Cut the quick, rip the Band-Aid off and just go. No, there's no point prolonging it. You can't make it work for the kids. You can't make it work because your partner is deciding to not be capable. Sometimes partners will just be not capable because they can't be fucked, and you'll cover their ass. So, I had one of them, my ex-husband. The whole time he was, fucking around on me, and he didn't leave himself because A, he was a coward, and he meant actually confronting me about it, and B, because he knew I was paying the bills and wiping his ass. He had one in the house and one on the streets. It was if not several, I should think, considering it went on for 16 years. But you gotta learn when to cut it off, because otherwise you're getting dragged out and torturing yourself, and it never gets better. It never gets better. If they've shown you who they are and what they're capable of, and it's horrible, and you know that it's abusive, you gotta go. They're not gonna change. It's not gonna get better. They're not gonna suddenly decide, oh no, I love you, I'm gonna be monogamous from here on out, and this is done. It's like, they'll go back to it. If they get bored or spiteful or petty, they'll go back to it, and they'll use it as a weapon against you. I swear to God, which is what my ex-boyfriend did. At one point we had an argument where he said I wasn't liberal enough, which was his words. I'm not liberal enough because I didn't agree with people sleeping around in a polyamorous kind of way. And it's just the way I'm designed. I'm monogamous, like strictly devoutly monogamous. He is not, I know now, thanks to evidence found around the apartment. But what he did was like, it was over Australia Day long weekend. He stayed with me, we had a fight. I dropped him off on the Monday, back to his apartment, because he doesn't drive because he's a fuckboy and a scrub. And by Tuesday night, he is out drinking and he brought someone home, and I found the evidence. Squished, like crammed down the back of his couch. And I called him on it, and he stonewalled me for months, if not weeks or months. I'm writing the book, I've got the timeline written out. I'm writing a book about him. I'm writing several books about him. It's huge. But he stonewalled me. I'm sitting there going, why? I've physically caught you out with evidence that you are cheating on me, and you decide to make yourself the victim and, cut me off and hold our relationship hostage because you won't talk about what just happened. And, at that point I should have said, this is fucking abuse. This is just abuse. Because you're not even trying to fix things. You're not trying to heal things. You won't admit that you've done something wrong, and I can see physically you have because I've got it in my hand. And he just fucked off. And it took me chasing him to go and try and fix the relationship, which is what he wanted. It's a power trip. That way he doesn't have to admit he's wrong. He can do it again later on because he did. I found rhinestones around the house as well. I found extra wine glasses around the house. I found, you know, all these extra things that were around the house while I'd been at work. And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is going on? It's like I got remarried to the same asshole again. It's the same fucking tricks. Except this time I'm getting stonewalled. And I went, I recognize this pattern. I recognize this trend. I'm not fucking doing this. I've done this already for 16 years and fuck you for trying it again, because he knew the backstory of where I was coming from. I told him when we started dating, this is what I've just left. This is the problems you might be facing when you come to me. I might be a bit standoffish at first. I need help releasing, you know, I was very affectionate, to be honest. I'm a very affectionate person, but trusting, you know? And not many people trust at this age. Nearly 40. We've all got fucking trauma. We needed time to develop the intimacy so we could develop the trust and things like that. But he was constantly fucking me off to go out drinking with his mates and stuff like that, fucking around behind my back. And it's just like, there was never any trust there because he never allowed it to be built. He was also always trying to fuck around. He's a fuckboy. This is what they do. As long as they can get sex and money out of you, they're fine, they're happy. And they'll keep feeding you lies and bullshit as long as they keep the status quo running, which means that you're paying their bills, feeding them, giving them sex, giving them drugs if they want it, or whatever they, you know, you're an enabler. And they pick on people that are, you know, emotionally damaged. I was emotionally damaged, partly. I thought I had healed, but I was emotionally vulnerable because he was hoping that I would get emotionally hooked on to him. I didn't though, because, you know, I've already been through the shit and I recognize the trends. I'm like, fuck this, I'm not doing this again. This is boring and irritating. So you got to learn to recognize the signs and actually fucking cut it off when you can, because otherwise they'll ride that out. And you'll be stuck holding the baby, worst case scenario if you're a girl, or several babies from experience. Right, I'm gonna have to leave it there because it is Friday afternoon. I'm going to go and get my rations out of the chest freezer so I can defrost them in time for tomorrow. I'm hoping you have the grand, oh, is it St. Patrick's today, isn't it? Oh, if you go out for St. Pat's, please drink safely. I know some people drink, I don't drink. I don't drink at all. I would like to look at some things that we do that aren't alcoholic. So I bought a big sack of potatoes. As far as my Irish heritage goes, I'm not very, I'm gonna have to look into that a bit more. But, you know, I'm looking for some things that could basically be very Irish, that aren't based on getting shit-faced. So have a great St. Pat's. I know we celebrate it all over the world. I know America's got it big. England's got it somewhat. Irish are definitely kicking off at this point because they're coming into it. So have a fantastic weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow, I will hopefully do 2 podcasts tomorrow. But if I don't see you tomorrow, I'll probably see you next week sometime. Okay, so have a good one. Stay safe, guys. Okay?
So space, night, death, darkness, not being there is an essential component of being. You don't have the one without the other, just as your buzzsaw has no teeth.